The bank account was empty. All $15,000 for my daughter's surgery. Gone. I thought we had been hacked by a professional criminal. I never suspected the thief was my own 15-year-old son, sleeping in the room right next door to his sister. I am a 42-year-old woman, and I have always considered myself a planner. I make lists. I balance our budget to the penny. I believe in the slow, steady accumulation of responsible choices. For the past 5 years, the single biggest line item on my budget spreadsheet, the one that represented all our hopes and sacrifices, was labeled Maya's future. My daughter Maya is 12 years old. She is a bright, funny, and incredibly resilient kid who loves to draw and wants to be an animator someday. She also has adolescent idiopathic scoliosis. We caught it early, but despite years of aggressive bracing and physical therapy, the curve in her spine has continued to progress. It causes her chronic pain, affects her breathing, and has started to make her feel deeply self-conscious. The surgery, a spinal fusion, was not a matter of life or death, but it was a matter of quality of life. It was the one thing that could give her a future free from pain, a future where she could stand up straight and not feel like her own body was betraying her. The surgery was expensive, and our insurance would only cover a portion of it. The remaining balance was $15,000. So for 5 years, my husband and I saved. We did not take vacations. We drove our old cars until they were practically falling apart. I took on extra freelance work at night after the kids were asleep, and my husband picked up every overtime shift he was offered. Every spare dollar, every tax refund, every birthday check from a relative went into that separate high-yield savings account. Watching that balance grow, dollar by dollar, was a tangible representation of our love for our daughter. It was our promise to her, written in digits. The day had finally come. We had the full amount. I had the consultation with the surgeon's office scheduled for the following week, and I was calling to make the initial $5,000 deposit to secure the surgery date. It was a Tuesday morning. The house was quiet. My son Leo, who is 15, was at school, and Maya was with him. I sat down at our kitchen table with a cup of coffee, a feeling of profound accomplishment washing over me. This was it, the culmination of 5 years of work. I logged into our online banking portal, my heart light and full of hope. I navigated to the savings account. And then, I saw it. The screen displayed the account balance in bold, black numbers. $0.00. I just stared at it, my brain refusing to process the information. It had to be a glitch, a website error. I refreshed the page, still 0. I refreshed it again, 0. My heart started to hammer against my ribs. A cold, metallic taste filled my mouth. I clicked on the transaction history, my hands starting to shake. The page was filled with a dizzying number of withdrawals, hundreds of them, all made over the last 3 months. Tiny ones, big ones, a constant, relentless drain. The money had been hemorrhaging out of the account, and I had never even noticed because I never touched it. I never had a reason to. My first thought was that we had been hacked. Some sophisticated cybercriminal from another country had breached our account. The idea was terrifying, but also strangely comforting. It meant the enemy was a faceless stranger, an external force of chaos. I immediately grabbed my phone and called the bank's fraud department, my voice trembling with a mixture of panic and righteous anger. I was about to find out that the enemy was not a stranger at all. The enemy was my own son. Update 1. The phone call with the bank was a descent into a special kind of corporate hell. I was on hold for what felt like an eternity, listening to a tinny, repetitive loop of classical music, while my mind raced through catastrophic scenarios. Finally, a man with a tired, monotone voice answered. I explained the situation, my voice high-pitched with panic. I told him my daughter's surgery fund had been completely drained, and that I needed to report a massive fraud. He asked me a series of security questions, and then pulled up the account. There was a long pause on his end. Then he said, in that same flat voice, that he was seeing the transactions, but that they did not appear to be fraudulent. My blood ran cold. I asked him what he meant. He said the charges had not triggered any of their security alerts. They were not made from an unusual location. In fact, he said, all of them had originated from our home's registered internet protocol address. I did not understand. I asked him where the money had gone. He began to read the transaction descriptions out loud. The name was one I had never heard before, Exola. And then another, Roblox Corporation. He just kept repeating them. Exola, Roblox. Roblox, Exola. The amounts varied, from $9.99 to $99.99, over and over again. I told him that was impossible. I said Roblox was a children's video game. My son Leo played it, but it was just a game. There was no way he could have spent that kind of money. The bank agent sighed, a sound of pure bureaucratic boredom. He told me that these were legitimate purchases for a digital currency called Robux, and that based on their records, the payments had been authorized from a device connected to our network using our saved payment information. He informed me that since the charges were not technically fraudulent from the bank's perspective, there was very little they could do. It was a civil matter, not a criminal one. I felt the floor drop out from under me. I hung up the phone, a wave of nausea washing over me. It could not be Leo. It just could not. He was a good kid. A little quiet, a little too obsessed with his computer, but a good kid. He knew what that money was for. He had heard us talk about it for years. He loved his sister. There had to be another explanation. Maybe his account was hacked. Maybe a friend had come over and done it. My mind desperately clung to any possibility that did not involve my son knowingly stealing his sister's future. I walked like a zombie to the small desk in the corner of our living room, where the family computer was. It was Leo's domain. He had built it himself with his father, a powerful gaming machine that was his pride and joy. My hands were shaking as I woke the computer up. I opened the web browser. His Roblox account was still logged in. I navigated to his account settings, then to his transaction history. And there it was, a record of every single purchase, page after page of them. It was not just a few small transactions. It was a digital shopping spree of epic, devastating proportions. $15,000, converted into a virtual currency, spent on virtual items in a virtual world. As I scrolled through the endless list of purchases for things like limited edition swords and game passes, the full weight of the betrayal crashed down on me. This was not a mistake. This was not an accident. This was a deliberate, sustained act of theft over the course of 3 months. My son, my quiet, sweet boy, had looked me in the eye every single day for the last 90 days, knowing he was systematically emptying his sister's surgery fund. I felt a grief so profound it almost choked me, followed by a rage so cold and pure it felt like ice water in my veins. I closed the laptop, and I waited for him to come home from school. Update 2. The sound of the front door opening was the loudest sound I had ever heard. I was sitting on the living room couch, the printed bank statement in a neat, damning pile on the coffee table in front of me. I had not moved in over an hour. My husband was at work, and I was glad. This needed to be just me and Leo, at least at first. Leo walked in, dropping his backpack by the door. He asked what was for dinner, his voice perfectly normal. He did not have a clue. He looked at me on the couch and his smile faltered a little. He asked if everything was okay. I did not answer. I just pointed to the stack of papers on the table. He walked over, a confused look on his face. He picked up the top page. I watched his eyes scan the long list of transactions. I watched the color drain from his face. I saw the flicker of panic, the brief, desperate calculation as he tried to think of a lie. He looked up at me, his face a mask of feigned innocence. He told me he did not know what that was. He said his account must have been hacked. The lie was so weak, so pathetic, it was almost insulting. I did not raise my voice. I did not need to. I spoke in a low, flat tone that was colder than any shout. I told him I had spoken to the bank. I told him I knew the charges had come from our house, from his computer. I told him I had seen the purchase history on his own Roblox account. I watched his facade crumble. His shoulders slumped, his eyes filled with tears. He collapsed onto the armchair opposite me and started to sob. These huge, gulping, childish sobs. He confessed to everything. The words tumbled out of him in a frantic, incoherent rush. He said he did not mean for it to get so out of control. It had started small, just a $10 purchase here and there. But then he met her. Her name was Ashley. He had met her in a game. She was a year older, beautiful, or at least her avatar was. She was funny and cool, and she paid attention to him. She was, he told me, his girlfriend. My heart twisted. A girlfriend he had never met, never even video chatted with. Ashley, he explained, loved expensive things in the game. She would talk about the rare, limited items she wanted, the special gear, the exclusive game passes. She would tell him how much it meant to her when he bought them for her. It started with him spending his allowance. Then he found that our bank information was saved on the browser. He made one small purchase, a gift for her. I had not noticed. So he did it again, and again. The manipulation was textbook. She would praise him, call him the best boyfriend ever when he spent money. But when he hesitated, when he said he could not afford something, she would turn cold. She would threaten to leave him. She would tell him that other guys bought their girlfriends things all the time, and that if he really cared about her, he would find a way. So he did. He found a way. He found his sister's future, and he had gifted it piece by piece to a digital ghost. He cried about how he knew it was wrong, but he was so scared of losing her. He loved her. I listened to his pathetic, heartbreaking confession, and I felt a dizzying mix of emotions. I was furious at his weakness, his selfishness, his monumental stupidity. I was heartbroken by the depth of his betrayal. And underneath it all, I felt a terrifying wave of pity for this foolish boy who had been so easily manipulated, who had traded his sister's well-being for the hollow affection of a scammer. But the pity did not change the facts. The money was gone. Every last cent. The surgery was gone. Maya's future, the one we had spent 5 years building, had been stolen and spent on pixels. I looked at my sobbing son, and I felt nothing. The love was still there, buried deep down, but on the surface, there was just a vast, cold emptiness. He looked up at me, his face streaked with tears and snot, and asked me what we were going to do now. I stood up and looked down at him, the boy I thought I knew. And I told him, my voice devoid of any warmth, that we were not going to do anything. I told him, you are going to fix this. Update 3. My husband, Mark, came home an hour later. I heard his keys in the door, the familiar sound of his work boots on the hardwood floor. He walked into the living room, a tired smile on his face, a smile that vanished the second he saw the scene in front of him. He saw me, sitting ramrod straight on the couch, my face a cold, tear-streaked mask. And he saw his son, Leo, curled up in a ball in the armchair, still hiccuping with pathetic sobs. His eyes darted to the pile of bank statements on the coffee table. He did not have to ask what had happened. You could see the realization dawn on him, the slow, horrifying calculation. He walked over, picked up a single sheet of paper, and his face turned a shade of pale I had never seen before. He looked at me, his eyes wide with a question he was too terrified to ask. I just gave a single sharp nod. I watched as the exhaustion in his posture was replaced by a rigid, trembling anger. He turned to Leo. He did not yell. It was worse than yelling. His voice was a low, dangerous whisper. He asked him if it was true. He asked him if he had taken his sister's money. Leo could not even speak. He just nodded, his body shaking. Mark looked like he had been physically struck. This was the man who had worked 60-hour weeks, who had come home with his hands aching and his back sore, all for that savings account. He had done it for Maya. He looked at his son, the boy he had taught to ride a bike and build a computer, and I could see the love in his eyes curdle into something else, something akin to revulsion. He told Leo to get up. He told him to go to his room and not to come out. Leo scrambled out of the chair and practically ran from the room. Mark sank onto the couch next to me, put his head in his hands, and for a full 5 minutes, he just sat there, completely silent. When he finally looked up, his eyes were red. He told me we had to call the police, that this was a grand theft. I told him no. I told him that sending our son to jail would not get the money back. It would only destroy what little was left of our family. I told him Leo would not be getting away with this. I told him he would pay for it. Not with jail time, but with his own future. I explained my plan. The first step was his gaming computer, his pride and joy. The machine he had used to commit the theft. It was the first thing that had to go. We were going to sell it, every last component, and that would be the first payment towards his debt. Mark listened, his jaw tight. Then he told me we had to do one more thing. We had to confront this, Ashley. He wanted Leo to understand, in no uncertain terms, that he had not just been foolish, but that he had been the victim of a predator. That none of it had been real. It was the only way to shatter the delusion completely. So we went to Leo's room. He was lying on his bed, staring at the ceiling. We told him to log into his computer. We told him to contact Ashley. He started to cry again, saying she would be mad at him. Mark's patience snapped. He roared at him to do it. Leo, terrified, sat at his desk and opened the chat program. He typed a frantic message to her, saying his parents had found out that he was in huge trouble and that he needed her help. We stood behind him, watching the screen. We waited. The message showed as read, and then Ashley began to type. But there was no message of support. No words of love. The chat bubble disappeared, and then a single line of text appeared on the screen from the system. This user has blocked you. Then her avatar vanished. Her profile was gone. She had ceased to exist. In that moment, Leo finally understood. He had not just stolen from his sister. He had traded her future for a ghost, for a black screen and a system message. He let out a sound that was not a cry, but a raw, wounded wail of a child who finally understands the true meaning of a nightmare. Update 4. The next day was a Saturday, and it was the day of the reckoning. There were no more tears, there was no more yelling. There was just a heavy, grim silence in our house as we began to dismantle Leo's life. We started with a computer. Mark and I walked into his room with a set of screwdrivers and a box. Leo was sitting on his bed, watching us, his face pale and empty. He did not protest. He just watched as his father, the man who had so lovingly helped him build that machine piece by piece a year ago for his birthday, now methodically took it apart. The graphics card he had saved up for, the liquid cooling system he had been so proud of, the multiple monitors. Each component was unscrewed, unplugged, and placed carefully into the box. It was like watching a funeral. We spent the rest of the day taking pictures of everything and posting it on online marketplaces. We sold it all: the computer, his expensive ergonomic gaming chair, his collection of games, his mechanical keyboard, all of it. By the end of the weekend, we had managed to recoup $2,700. It was a pathetic fraction of what he had stolen, a drop in the ocean of his debt. I made him watch as I took the cash and deposited it into the now reopened savings account. I showed him the new balance. I told him he now owed his sister $12,300. The second part of his punishment began on Monday. I had spent the weekend making calls. He was 15, but he was big and strong for his age. I found a job for him at a local restaurant, washing dishes and bussing tables. It was a grueling minimum wage job. I drove him there for his first shift. Before he got out of the car, I handed him a direct deposit form. I told him to give it to his manager. 100% of his paycheck was to be deposited directly into Maya's surgery fund. Every single cent he earned, for the foreseeable future, belonged to his sister. He would have no phone, no computer, no video games. His life was now to be school, his job, and his homework. That was it. For how long, he asked. I told him he could do the math. At his current wage, working 20 hours a week, it would take him approximately 3 years of his life to pay back what he had stolen in 3 months. The fallout within our family was catastrophic. The happy, easy dynamic we had once shared was gone, replaced by a tense, transactional relationship. I would drive him to and from his job in silence,